Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene, and I'm talking to you from our camp. There have been quite a lot of new subscribers, so I thought I'd do a quick once-over of where we are in the month of August. If this interests you, you can go back to previous Augusts. I think there's been 2, maybe 3 summers here, and take a look and see what we've got. Over there is a bridge, and that's where the River Medway comes through. It's low tide now. You can see where high tide goes. And this is our dock, goes out to a little rock. I don't go anywhere near the water. I am such a water hater. Oh, well, I like water, but I don't like what's in the water. And that's our ramp for where the sailboat goes. And that's the bridge up to, in the distance you can see the screened porch. And to your right you can see the bunkhouse. And this is where Steve comes. Woo! This is where Steve comes down, plays the banjo, sits with the cat. Sometimes I come down and read or knit. I like it this time of day when the sun is over on the other side of the camp. And just a sec, I'll show you another thing. So the property goes up past that little hill, and for about, it's probably, if you add it all together, it's about the size of a large backyard. And let's see, this is the deck where we are currently putting tents when people come to visit, which isn't too often, because we really don't have any amenities to speak of. This is the bunkhouse from the east side. Where you can see sort of the horizon line, that's the Medway River, so it kind of runs across the middle of the screen. And there's the hammock where, if the mosquitoes are low, you can, I don't go there very often. The mosquitoes can be quite bad actually, unless there's a wind blowing like there is now. So we have a lot of spruce and a lot of blueberries, a lot of alder. That's the bunkhouse. I'll take you to that in a second. And that's the far side. So we really have got, I don't know, maybe 200 yards from side to side, and through the back of that is a saltwater marsh. This is the barbecue area, and we had a tree come down in a hurricane last, when was it? September, I guess. So all the shrub, brush stuff that you see wasn't there last summer. It's been since then that we've had to clear everything away. It's made a bit of a mucky mess. Drives me crazy, but it is too darn hot to deal with right now. This is the entry to the bunkhouse. Steve built this. He's built it primarily by himself. He had help from Phoebe and myself, and I think a couple of Phoebe's boyfriends over time. So whenever someone strong showed up in her life, we used them. This is the little reading, writing nook, and it's a great spot. The cat loves it. And the eaves are deep enough that most of the time, if it's not blowing too hard, the rain comes down and we don't get wet. And this little table folds away. And that used to be where we did our brushing teeth and stuff like that, but across the way we have got a futon bed that pulls out. It's quite comfortable. And through that spot right there, we just added an annex, and we were able to cut through. You see that in, I think, last summer's video. We were able to cut through there to an opening so we can get through to the second building. And that meant that a lot of things like the luggage and spare towels and cat food and cat litter and everything have gone through to here. And it's not the best light, so I won't share with you, but this is the toilet niche, just a pail with sawdust. We don't have any running water, so we have to bring in our own water. And we don't have a floor yet. We have a flooring is at home in the basement, but we just have not had the wherewithal to put it in. That's our new bathing spot, teeth brushing, shaving, that kind of stuff. And that's where we keep our clothes. And this is the view. Well, I think I need to stand back to give you a full sense of the view. It's looking west over the marsh, and right now the leaves are really full, but in the spring and the fall it's much more clear, and you can see all the way across. That sort of line of, can I do this? How do I do this? That line over there, that's the old railway trail, and it's part of the Rails to Trails system. And just, let me see if I can, sorry, I'm trying to find my finger. Okay. Just sort of, you can't really see it, but along this lower line, that's the edge. And this is all marsh through here, ducks and Canadian geese and cranes and swamp owls. It's really terrific. And as I say, right now the other half is mostly storage, but that is not the long-term game plan. The game plan is to get a nice reading chair in here and some kind of, I think like a pull-down cot kind of thing, so for a single bed, and probably some cupboards. The idea is we're hoping that eventually we can start coming up sooner than July and last longer than the end of August, because things really drop at nighttime. And we have got a really good little firewood oven. What do you call those things? Not firewood, stove, wood stove. You have a little wood stove that's going to go right there, and it should keep us warm. But there's no insulation. Oh, I'll show you the roof. The roof is kind of important because we've got this 360 clerestory, and the roof is just vinyl. So if you're ever looking for a roofing material that's lightweight and very durable, get outdoor vinyl. And so we really don't need any lights until it's like totally dark. And we get, you know, all this light. And because those are vinyl windows, not glass windows, we don't have to worry about freezing and thawing and cracking of the glass. And these windows are screen. We just put in a shutter at winter time. And in here, the windows are glass, but so far so good. They're old wooden windows. They're not going to go anywhere. I don't know why we use vinyl windows. They're so useless. But wood windows are still the best. They last hundreds of years if you keep track of them. All right, I'm going to take you to the space we spend most of our time. That's the annex from outside. It's got a separate little door, so if we have guests, they can go in that door and not disturb people who are sleeping there. They can go into their little room there. Or if they're over on the other deck I showed you where there's a tent, then they can go in and use the bathroom without having to go through the space. Now, what we come to here is a very, very important part of Missy's time at the camp. That little intersection that goes up to the road, right there, and a little to the left, sort of right about there, that's Missy land. And for some reason, the mice and the voles have not figured out that they should get the hell away. And she spends hours there waiting. And that she plays with them. But sometimes she's lucky, sometimes she's not. But luckily for the voles, she's on a long leash, and she chases after them through the tree trunks, and gets snarled up. So she doesn't have a hope in hell of catching them for real. Our water butt. And it comes down off of the eave, and it's got a really nice sloping roof, and that tree is where we used to hang our shower. But we don't have a shower up here. We've got some kind of plastic spray bottle that we use, and we can add hot water to it if we think ahead, which I rarely do. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this also has 360 degrees worth of clerestory. That's vinyl as well. And that's looking out to the west. So the sun's kind of bad in that direction. Same thing, we don't have to worry about glass shifting and freezing and cracking. And this is all screen and looks out towards the road. And we've got these vinyl curtains that can, sort of like on boats, you may see they've got the big vinyl kind of entryways that keeps the weather out from the inside of the boats. And we've got another one in the corner there. And then the rest here, we don't usually get dominant winds in this direction, so we use shower curtains. And this is the kitchen area, cooler area, and one of the things when it's humid, right now we're having huge amounts of humid, the dishes don't dry. Bread box has made a big difference to keeping things fresh. Cooking area, dishes, food, water. Over in the corner we've got the cat litter and the propane tank, a little bit of a closet. And here's the interesting part. This is where we read, rock, knit, nap, drink, listen to the ball game. We've got a little table and chairs, and that's Missy's favorite chair. Whoops! I don't really know if it has to do with the chair or just where it happens to be. So there you go. There's a picture of Missy, the tried and true vole hunter. And now again, things have started to grow in from when we've been here about 15 years. So we used to have a clear view out to the marsh, and things have grown in. Let me see if I think this one might be better. Yeah, there we go. So that's the view that we had. Now we're just discussing whether we're going to take down some of this shrubbery, and there's a pine tree starting to block the view. On the other hand, it protects us from being seen. So, and then this tree, which is slowly dying, the chickadees love, the squirrel loves. Squirrel loves to sit there and chatter at Missy, and Missy just goes kind of crazy. And yeah, so that's, they torture each other. They enjoy it thoroughly. And I mean, I wouldn't say that if Missy's tail wasn't completely up and happy. And the other thing that happens is the mouse likes to, or I'm sorry, not the mouse, the squirrel. Right there, she likes to sit with an acorn, not a pine cone, and just nibble its way through, sitting right there. And Missy just sits here in despair. But yeah, anyways, they're having fun. Okay, books in a few minutes. Okay, time for the books. It's a good thing I did that video of the campsite yesterday, because we had great sun and we now have lots of clouds, lots of overcast, and if you hear weird noises in the background, that is either rain or rain dripping off of the leaves from the trees above. The first book I've brought out is The Narrow Boat, which is an older book, and it is written by L.T.C. Rolt, and I have very little internet connection, so I won't be putting the names of the books down below. So I'll try and hold them up for longer so you can capture the titles. We have been listening for a couple of years now, maybe as much as 5 years, to no, it's not a podcast, is it? It's a podcast. Narrow Boat. How can I forget that? Nights on Narrowboat, something like that. And it's on the boat Erica, and Richard is the person who does the talking. And he started out on his first year while living aboard a narrowboat in England. And as a child, he had been raised on a narrowboat till he was about in his, like 10s, 11-year-old kind of kid. And then now in his approaching retirement, he and his wife have purchased a narrowboat. And as the time has gone past, he's mentioned different books, and I just really enjoy that kind of, especially in the summer, that kind of, retracting from the everyday world and solidifying down and trying to figure out what are essentials. And I think it's a really good practice to have not very much every once in a while. That's one of the reasons I like camping, is that you really have to get down to what you absolutely need, and then there's that weird spot where you really need something like a book or a baseball game on the radio or something like that, but there's still like extreme luxury items when you compare to the camping environment. So this camp is like this because we can only operate off of batteries and solar power. It's a constant struggle to kind of keep things charged. So all this brings us back to the narrowboat life, which is very similar. You've only got so many square feet, and you've also got a lot of area that has to be given over to things like engines and water tanks, and so you don't really have a lot of space. So one of the things he had to do was bring down the books that he wanted, and this is one of the books that he had mentioned. I think he's got a bookshelf that's not much. It's maybe a little bigger than mine, but I only bring what I need for the 2-week period, and that would then be like a lifetime's worth of books for him to have to settle down on. Can you imagine those of us who have big bookshelves? Like, could you do it? Could you take the books off of your shelves and just imagine, I think behind me is about 8 books. So let's just pretend 25 books. Could you bring it down to 25 books? That had to last you the last 20, 25 years of your life. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's a very weird experiment. So anyways, Narrowboat is the one that Steve and I have been reading aloud. And it was printed in the, I believe it was the 1950s. And it's got these old kind of woodcuts in them. And this is a man who has purchased a narrowboat, and his wife are going to live aboard for a while. They haven't quite been married yet, so he's getting it ready, and he's in the boat yards getting everything sorted out, painted and fitted, and all that kind of stuff. And so we're hearing about where that process, and I'm not sure what page we're on. It's a nice amount of reading every day. We're on page 42. And as Steve says, I wonder if we're ever going to get on the water. We're spending quite a lot of time with preparation. But given the rest of the images and so forth, I think we'll eventually get to the water. Okay. The other book I finished was a completion of a series for me. I think that the author will keep on going, but I think I'm done. And it is by Robin Stevens, and it is The Wells and Wong Mystery, and the book is called First Class Murder. And let me hold that up for a while. This is the 4th book in this series, and I missed it and went on to number 5. This is my favorite. They're on the Orient Express, and there is a murder, and it's a closed room murder, or a closed bunk room murder, and it's really well done. They do make references to Orient Express, the Agatha Christie book. They meet up with a number of people who maybe are guilty for the doing of the murder, but there's also a young lad called Alexander who's American, and Daisy, as in previous books, does not like to open up to other people telling the truth or using their advice or what have you. She's very determined to solve these things on her own, whereas, oh my gosh, her name just went straight out of my head. Don't you hate that, gang? Hazel. Hazel is much more open. Daisy is very focused and detailed and so on, but Hazel is just much more sort of organic in the way that she solves things. And so she becomes friends with Alexander, and we see Alexander in a couple of subsequent books. And so it's a really nicely handled murder. Not improbable. It's completely plausible that a couple of kids just hanging around would be the ones that would find the clues, because the adults have got a solution that they're aiming towards, and so these clues that the kids encounter are logically achieved and overcome or figured out. So I really think this is a great series for middle readers, and as I've said, a good mystery book. I think it's good for all ages. This one, The Maker of Swans, by Perak O'Donnell. I'm sure you would pronounce that much better if you understood the pronunciation of Irish names. Got a great cover. It's sort of a weirdo book. No, I don't. Well, now all of a sudden there's this thing about Republicans and weirdo. I don't mean that. it's just it's just a odd little book, and so there's sort of this sense of this supernatural in we have these undescribed skill set that Mr. Crow has, and perhaps the young protagonist Clara has, but it's never in the forefront, and we never really get a clear explanation as to what exactly until we get with Mr. Crow fairly far into the book that we finally figure out what Mr. Crow can do. Clara, I can only leave the book thinking I know what Clara does, but am I absolutely right? No. Or, yeah, there's room for doubt. And so what we've got is Eustace, who is the butler, Mr. Crow, who is the sort of manor house owner, master in the old way of thinking of things. Clara, who's a young girl, she's about 11, who's also mute. And then there's a bunch of secondary characters that are rather well, some of them are pretty interesting. And we've got Eustace's path, and we have a little bit of Mr. Crow's past. We never really get Clara's past. She just has entered the life of Eustace and Crow without explanation to us. And then so Clara's a bit of an enigma through the whole story. And the plot line is that Crow has done something that he's forbidden to do, and there are going to be consequences. And so the sort of guild, if you like, that he belongs to is going to come down heavy. And so Eustace has decided to spruce up the estate and get good food in and good servants. They've let everything slip for the last few years because Mr. Crow has stopped being in the outer world doing whatever it is that he's so good at doing. And so we know that there's this threat coming. Clara can sort of sense it just through, obvious observations and what's happening around her, but also just the sense of tension and what Eustace is starting to build as tension. And so these people arrive. There's a bunch of nefarious deeds. Clara's kidnapped. And how does Clara get back home? The bulk of the action in terms of that piece happens towards the last quarter of the book. I think it's very well resolved. I think it does rely a little bit on this thing in the background that we're not really sure of, that's just this kind of lurking magic. But that's okay. It's not like it's not like Harry Potter. It's very, I don't know how to describe it. It's very an undertone. There's an undertone. So I really enjoyed it. Eustace particularly was a very strong character. Mr. Crow is just a dilettante. And the secondary characters certainly serve their purpose. They're well drawn, and they have got nobody's there who's superfluous to the storyline. I think the setting is quite interesting. It's an estate that's kind of falling to pieces and has multiple treasures. So rare books, rare art, rare statuary, mechanical things, and just a lot of really cool things you'd want as a kid to explore. And so that's kind of the gist of the book, because if I tell you too much, the plot relies heavily on what's that word? It's not a knife cutting plot. It's kind of a fuzzy little electric plot that's just kind of doing this all the way through, and it does move quickly, but it just doesn't. It's just not really drawn out for us. I'm in the middle of two books right now. I was reading The Maker of Swans while I was also reading, let's do that without glare. I think that's, oh my dear. Okay, let me do that for the title at least. Strange the Dreamer by Lanny Taylor. And that gives you the picture of the whole cover. Strange is a person. He Laszlo Strange, and he was an orphan raised in a monastery, ran away, went to a library in the capital of the land that he lives in, and becomes an apprentice librarian and then a librarian. But there's the level of librarians and then there's the level of scholars. And so the librarians really are, as far as the scholars concerned, they're not much more than bookshelvers, although they are research unto themselves. They just don't have the same credentials, or should we really say the same amount of gold. So there's a certain separation between the two. And the country is pretty much bankrupt. So the alchemists are trying to get lead to turn to gold, which, honestly, I don't know what to think. I don't know if maybe this is just a complete 21st century presumption, but if I looked at a lump of lead and thought, oh, that's going to make a good subsource for gold, I don't know. I think I'd probably be looking at the gemstones or even pyrite, or just something that had something shiny in it that I would think, okay, well, there's shiny stuff in here. Shiny stuff will make shiny stuff. They should have asked me. Okay, so Laszlo has all this information of fables and fairy stories, and he thinks he's got an idea on how gold could be made. And he has, through a weird circumstance, met the young alchemist who is in charge of this research. And it's just it's such a big book. There's so many plots. So we've got this search for gold, and we've got Laszlo being completely undermined as a librarian. He's done a huge amount of research on fables and so forth, but focused on a world that has completely disappeared. So something has happened that has become an intersection between the world of Laszlo and this other place, and it's been about 200 years. And so he's just bringing these bits and pieces together, and it turns out to be a clue to making of the gold, but it also becomes his leverage when the people from that weird world show up conveniently, and off they go to that world. So I'm now in this other world. There are seraphim. I don't have much. I keep wanting to. I forget, what is a seraphim. It's like something that floats. So I'm not 100% sure. But these beings are godlike and have certain powers, but they've all only got one power. They're not like multiple powers that they can do. And they've come down in this kind of incredible metallic thing that is resting over the world that disappeared, and the people who've been in this other world have finally managed to kill off pretty much everybody who's up in this floating thing, but they want to get rid of the floating thing because it's blocking out the sun. It's a very practical problem that they want to solve. They don't realize there's anybody still up in this floating tower, let's call it. So Laszlo and the guy who was doing the gold figuring out, and a whole bunch of other scientists and experts and people who do explosions and just things like that have shown up to try and figure out how to get rid of this thing. So we're starting to get into a much more magical world, or other powers, because like people aren't figuring out how to turn on their fire and make soup using magic. No, they're more peculiar. Like, for instance, someone can make things grow amazingly. Now, if she doesn't have a seed, she can't make it grow. There's someone else who can go in and get into people's dreams, but if someone's not dreaming, they can't force them into dreaming. So there's limitations on these powers. And I don't know. There's part of me that really likes that. I want to see where it's going, but it is so big. So I have to read other things as I'm reading this. And I picked up Jane Urquhart's, there we go, Sanctuary Line. Now, I read Jane Urquhart back when she was first published. So that would have been in the late 1990s, early 2000s, I think.
And I read one or two of her things. I enjoyed them because at the time it it was really different. I was used to much more plotting kinds of plot lines and characters and so on. And Jane Urquhart like runs around a sentence. So this book is about not telling us what happened in the past. And sooner or later, we will eventually creep up on this momentous event that somehow informs the present that we're a little more connected to, but because she just won't tell us what happened, it's like, so far I'm still not caring. And I don't know whether it's because I've just bypassed this method of sentence structure, or it's not sentence structure, it's more like oblique storytelling. And so, yeah, is that the writer's problem? Was that my problem? Am I just too impatient? Have I become too inured in books that, give you the story and the characters and trot, 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 trot? I like a book that challenges me, but I want to also have a sense of where we're going. And so far, I have no idea where we're going. And what page am I on? I'm at 41. I'm creeping up on that 50-page mark where I would DNF it if by page 50 I haven't had something say, okay, this is worth going on. However, this is going to be my book club for Reading Across Canada choice. And so I guess I'm doomed. I don't know. And so I've got a low battery. I better go. And I will see all you guys next week because there's a really important thing that I haven't. Okay. Jolene and Lindy, Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl and Lindy from Magpie Reads, are doing this challenge to a number of booktubers, and I was asked to join in and to bring up my favoritist books from 2000 to 2023, 24, and Canadian. And what do I think would be on the best? I'm not sure if they're going to do 100 or if they're going to do 10, but anyway, so I've been asked to tell them what my 100 are, what my 10 are, and so I guess I'm running out of battery. I'll have to tell you next week. Another booktube cliffhanger. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true. Bye-bye for now.